Hello and welcome back to Broadside Gaming with me, Zug. So, in the last video, you saw the Brawler knife build, which is just speedy fun, hacking and slashing. Now we're going to take a look at something a little bit more tactical. So again, this is a knife build, but this knife build is all about being accurate. So, we're still using the Catagen Mark III Combat Blade. Modifiers are pretty much how you want them. I would prefer the mobility and penetration switched, but, is what it is. We've got in damage to infested and critical hit chance. And the blessings we're going for are Mercy Killer and Uncanny Strikes. So for the perks, you probably want, instead of infested enemies, you kind of want to go for either flak or unyielding for boss damage or special damage. But, I used what I got up. And then for the blessings, we've got Mercy Killer, 60% weak spot damage, enemies with bleed stacks, and Uncanny Strikes, 24% rending on enemy weak spot hits for 3.5 seconds, stacks 5 times. So this build requires us to be hitting those weak spots more. As the last build was all about just hacking and slashing, this one requires us to be a bit more guided in what we're doing. And for the secondary weapon, I'm using the Catagen Mark II heavy las pistol, but you can use whatever you want. You can use that, the Agrippina Mark 14 quick draw stub revolver, or the Cantrell. Basically anything you want is pretty much usable here. I prefer the las pistol because I like Dum Dum and Infernus, and we usually have quite a high crit, so this is just going to help us that little bit better. But if you want something that hits hard and is very accurate, then there's the Zerona Mark IIA quick draw stub revolver with surgical hand cannon. This thing will pick off targets at basically any range. If you can see him, you can kill him. Now, for the Curios, we're going to be using health, toughness, health. And as you can see, all of them have got the same perks on with toughness, health, and toughness regeneration. If you want, you can get rid of the toughness for more health. I like to have just one in there, just that little extra boost. As you can see, I'm not using any wound modifiers. That's because this isn't a martyrdom build. If you're running martyrdom, of course, you want all those wounds. And right, let's go to the talents. So as you can see here, again, we're leaning here on the right, but we're going to grab the middle first for Anointed Blood and Purge the Unclean for that increased damage against Infested and Unyielding. And then down here, we're going to be grabbing Backstabber into Scourge, into Second Wind, Enduring Faith, picking up Blades of the Faith, and then jump over here to grab Duelist, 50% weak spot and critical hit damage for 3 seconds on successful dodge. We will be dodging an awful lot with this build, and we want that weak spot and critical hit damage. And then Until Death, fatal damage instead grants you invulnerability for 5 seconds. This isn't quite as good as having both that and Holy Revenant, but it gives you that little second wind to kind of ignore a bit of a fluffed attack. And then we're going to come over here to the right again, grabbing Dance of Death, Thy Wrath Be Swift, into Good Balance. Successful dodge grants 25% damage reduction for 2 seconds. As I said, we're going to be dodging an awful lot. Then we're going to be grabbing Ambuscade, 20% damage to ranged backstab attacks. Basically, shooting stuff in the back. Loner, you always count as being in at least 2 coherency. And then we're going to be grabbing Shroudfield. Now, I used to really hate Shroudfield because it didn't feel as good as, say, the Carillion Shade builds in Vermintide, which I absolutely loved. The Dual Dagger Carillion Shade builds of Stealth. You'd be able to pop out in the middle of a Storm Vermin pack and basically tear them to pieces and then disappear again. Doesn't quite work like this in Darktide, but it is still pretty good. So we're going to grab a Shroudfield into Mastercrafted Shroudfield. Stealth duration is increased to 6 seconds, gives you a little bit more leeway. And then Invigorating Revelation. Replenish 40% toughness over 5 seconds on leaving stealth. Also gain 20% damage reduction for 5 seconds. So this is going to give us that toughness boost. And then we're going to be coming down here into Sustained Assault, 4% melee damage for 5 seconds on hitting an enemy with a melee attack, stacks 5 times. This is just going to be a massive damage boost for us. And then we're going to be coming down here into Inexorable Judgment. And we're going to be grabbing Pious Cutthroat, Backstab kills restore 20% ability cooldown, which is going to help us Shroud Field more, which will give us more damage, which will give us more toughness, which will allow us to use Pious Cutthroat more, and then, you know, bounces off each other. And then Innoxious Judgment itself. Moving grants you momentum, stacks 15 times. You hit an enemy, spend all momentum, gaining 1% melee attack speed, 1% range attack speed, and 1% damage per stack, last 6 seconds. We are going to be a pocket rocket build. So we're going to be bouncing all over the place, continuously moving, dodging, sliding, and just generally keeping on our feet. And that's going to keep Innoxious Judgment stacking up really quickly. And we're also going to be grabbing Retributor's Stance, replenish 2% toughness for each spent stack of momentum. This is also why I kept the Curio with increased toughness on. It's just going to work out that little bit better. And then Inebriate's Poise, grant 3 stacks of momentum on a successful dodge. As I said, lots and lots of dodging. This build is an incredibly fast-paced build. You want to keep dodging, you want to keep sliding. As you can see, my aim's a bit off, as it's been about 3 or 4 months since I've played properly. But still, the builds are working. But it does require you to be a little bit more accurate than the last build, because you want to get those weak spot hits. You want to lay that bleed down, you want to keep dodging, and generally just aim for the face. Again, same with Bulwarks and Crushers. Generally, if you aim up here, between the shoulder blades, it tends to count that as a weak spot hit. But you don't really need to do that with Gunners, Gunluggers, or Crushers, because you can generally just hit them in the face. But Bulwarks are a little bit more annoying. And obviously with Shroud Field, it gives you that stealth to be able to run up behind things and just absolutely waste them. But don't forget about your daggers. Not great on Crushers, but still funny. So you want to try and get your momentum up as quick as you can with running, dodging, and sliding, doing all that great stuff. And then Shroud Field into the back and try and hit it in the face, like I did. There you go. That is generally how the build works. You're going to be jumping in and out of stealth. You're going to be trying to take out the toughest enemies before they touch your team, and trying not to get hit as you dodge around, aiming for the face or any weak spot on the target. And don't forget, just to stealth up whenever you can to take out anything that's threatening the team. Also, the other fun thing about Shroud Field, it is a clutch ability. If your entire team gets downed or a couple of members are downed in a bad place, you just Shroud Field up, you run over to them, and you get them up. And that is also why we're taking the increased time in Shroud Field, because it gives you that little bit of extra time to try and help your team. But there you go. I'll open up for the talents one last time, just so you can have a look through them. This build does take a bit of practice to get used to. It is not as easy as the Brawler build. The Brawler build just requires you to be flying around, slashing anything that is alive. This build requires you to be a little bit more accurate. So don't be worried if it takes you a couple of games to really get your eye in on what you're doing. God knows I know. I need to. There you go, folks. I really do hope you enjoy the build. And if you do, please like, subscribe, ring that little bell for notifications. It really does help us out. And, enjoy yourselves. I'll see you for the next one. So until then, see you later.